All right. Well, Graham, you're on, kiddo. So, Graham, are you going to tell him the story about when you, okay, so I'll tell it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Let me tell
Graham,
him.
do you want to say it or I'll say it? Well, actually, I have a story about both of them. So let me think for a minute. Oh man. So
You're blowing it, Joanne. Let me.
sorry, I have to remember. Okay, so Katie's sister's a nurse, and when I was pregnant, Katie came to me and said, "Joanne, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much pain do you think you're going to have when you're giving birth?" And I said, maybe a 7." She goes, "No way, it's going to be so much higher than 10."
Yeah, I
That
would
was one
imagine.
story about it. And then Graham, you took my class, you took engineering 5 when you were a high school kid, right? When you were
Yeah,
16, and
yeah, I
you were
did.
like, boy, this bitch is too much work or whatever. What did
Oh,
you?
it wasn't. It was like I was like, this lady is crazy, New Yorker. Like, oh my gosh. Um, so yeah, I also went to school in Santa Cruz, actually San Lorenzo Valley. So I grew up in Boulder Creek. It sounds like this class today is specifically focused on industrial engineering. Is that correct, Joanne?
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up, I was like pretty good at math, but I was really involved in sports, and school really wasn't my deal. I was kind of a little bit rebellious. I liked sports and other stuff like that. So in junior high, I was racing motocross, amateur motocross, and that was pretty much my focus. I was pretty blessed with that. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but my parents definitely, my dad liked racing. So I kind of focused on that. And then I actually went to homeschool a little bit in high school to kind of support the fact that I was gone a lot of the time racing. And school really, at that time, wasn't very difficult for me. The reading and writing stories I didn't like. To me, it just seemed like a waste of time. So I actually dropped out of high school, and very shortly thereafter, I broke my shoulder 2 times in a row, and I broke a bone in my back, which was my facet, and it healed into my sciatic nerve. And I had no desire really to go back to school, but my mom was like, "Man, you need to go do community college." So I went to community college and did some math. Like I think it was algebra 152 or 154. And I took an intro to engineering basically because I was good at math. Everybody thinks you'll be an engineer. And that's when I met Joanne for the first time. And I remember just being completely overwhelmed I think I was 16. I took a California high school proficiency exam. I wasn't old enough to take the GED. And it was like, holy moly, this is serious. Like, Joanne really pounds into you, how serious engineering is. And let me tell you guys, you have the best college to go to at Cabrillo and the best faculty there, hands down, hands down. So I kind of jump around. So that was my first deal. And then I actually went off and I kind of got like, menial labor jobs. Like I split firewood, and then I was building houses, and I was making, decent money in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Atherton. So I was on nice projects building, several $1 million homes. And I really didn't have health insurance or medical or dental or anything like that. And it's like, so I got on through a buddy with a mechanical engineering company that did HVAC and process piping for clean rooms. And it was cool stuff, but I was still doing labor, right? I mean, like I'm cutting pipe and I'm fitting pipe and I'm brazing stuff. And I always liked hands-on things like that because I always felt like, hey, I'm out here, I'm doing it, I'm tough. And it was a very small company. There was probably 10 employees, the owner, an engineer in the office that did all the bidding and some of the technical stuff. And then there was a foreman for sheet metal and a foreman for pipe fitting. And this engineer would come out to the job site, and we're doing projects for like Fujifilm. One of the things I did was set up, a whole system of clean rooms for a company that was coming up with skin printing. So they're actually using like an inkjet printer, highly evolved, to do printing of skin using stem cells for people who were burned. So there were cool projects, but this engineer came out and he was middle-aged, probably my age, and he just screwed up everything. So that was when I was like, man, if this guy can get an engineering degree, I mean, I can too. I don't want to do this forever. So I asked him, I go, hey man, like, what's your deal? And he actually went to San Jose State at night and he did night school. And that's how he put himself through. So I go, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I started and I was working, it was like a union job. So I was working from 4 a.m. to like 2 p.m. And then I would commute over the hill back home. I was living in Scotts Valley at the time. And I would go to Cabrillo and do night school. And I just did my very first math classes. And I got through like 152 and 154. I mean, I had nothing. I didn't do chemistry because I was a glorified high school dropout. So the company worked with me pretty good so I could do that stuff. And I actually, at some point, it became, you know, okay, you got to do to get financial aid, which I hope, you know, if all you guys are eligible for, you're staying on top of getting your financial aid. I mean, that's just a direct investment that, you know, the state, the government is going to make in your future. So if you're not staying on top of that stuff, like, get on it, because at the end of the day, it's money that's out there for you to take advantage of to better yourself, which betters our whole community, which makes a better life for your kids and your family. And it's just really, really good. So please make sure there's counselors at Cabrillo. So I did that and I had to get, you know, 12 units, you got to get good grades. And I just got really serious about it. You know, at the time I was 26, I had been out of school for a long time. I'd experienced, you know, some ups and downs in life. And I started enjoying it. And I went through and I did, I want to say at Cabrillo, I want to say 14 math classes. So I did 152, 154, trigonometry, the 3 calculuses, linear algebra, differential equations. I did all the physics, the chemistry, and I ended up transferring to UC Berkeley. So I think a lot of people, Katie touched on it, every time I come and hear other alums speaking, everybody says the exact same thing that I'm going to tell you right now, is that Cabrillo prepares you better than you think. So if you're thinking I'm at a community college and I'm going to go to San Jose State or to Cal Poly or to UC Davis, UC Berkeley, wherever you're going to go, you're getting such a good education there. So please take advantage of it. Take advantage of your instructors, your counselors. You know, always you're going to have certain individuals who might be busier than others and have, you know, things have changed a lot with the pandemic. But I think that if you do your homework yourself, check on, what is it? The transfer agreement, all these different things you can do. Assist, it was assist.org. Is it still assist.org, Joanne? Okay. And just make sure that you're planning academically, right? You know, the first industrial engineering video that we watched, I mean, I was like, good God, bam, let me slam my head against the wall here. It makes industrial engineering sound miserable. Joanne's touched on like the pizza place downtown that, you know, makes her stomach turn because the inefficiencies. Everywhere I go is like that. My wife turns to me, she's like, they need an industrial engineer. She's like, you could really help this place. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for engineers and like big data statistics. The guy had said like, you're not going to do a lot of advanced math as an industrial engineer. I disagree with that. Like when I got to, I didn't really know what I had in store, but when I got to UC Berkeley, I thought I was pretty much done with my math, but I had to do nonlinear optimization, which is like these, you know, multivariable, like, you know, kind of like a quadratic equations where you're trying to find like different maximums and minimums to determine mixtures, ratios, and blends for refineries. There's a lot of math that goes into that stuff. And they go through some of that stuff pretty fast, but really Katie had mentioned it, like statistics. You're gonna take some more statistics if you wanna be an industrial engineer. That's for sure, because you wanna look at times and processes and variability and processes, and you really wanna optimize that. Like you hear, I think probably everybody's heard of Six Sigma. which has to do with standard deviations away from the mean, like 6 sigmas away. So in processes and manufacturing, they try to make a process as stable as possible, right? For a certain amount of money. You can design a bearing that has perfect tolerances and no deviation, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to manufacture that. And then if you allow a certain amount of variability, then your manufacturing cost and your tooling cost will come down a little bit. So when you design a process as an industrial engineer, you kind of want to know how much variability is allowed to go into that process. If you're designing like a front wheel for a children's bicycle bearing, as opposed to, you know, a high quality aircraft bearing for the Air Force, there's a difference there. So, and cost is really almost always the bottom line. So yeah, that's how I got interested in engineering, and how I kind of went through. So I transferred to UC Berkeley. Not a lot of students transfer to UC Berkeley. When I got there, I was really kind of amped. Lindsay Crawford, who I went to school with, she was the one who kind of pumped me up. I didn't even know about UC Berkeley. And in hindsight, in some ways, maybe it would have been better for me to go to a Cal Poly or a San Jose State, because I actually despise wearing a suit and tie. I've done that for a very small portion of my career. That's not the kind of engineer I want to be. I'm more like I put on a hard hat, I go out and I want to work in the field. And I learned that at my first internship, where I worked for Bayer Pharmaceutical and I did process improvement for them. Sat in front of a computer all day, Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, emails, you know, and it was ridiculous. It was horrible. I needed to do yoga every morning just to make sure that my back functioned properly. So, so I didn't really know what an industrial engineer was either. And I'll tell you guys right now, from my experience, just getting an engineering degree, like we always get so caught up on like, oh, what discipline do I need to be? Oh, I want to be a, you know, a chemical engineer, an industrial engineer, you know, a robotics engineer. For the most part, there is a little bit of overlap there. It's good to do your due diligence, listen to different speakers and talk to people when you go to career fairs. You definitely want to make sure that you're geared towards like computer science type of stuff. I feel like right now, when I graduated from UC Berkeley, I remember walking around the career fair, and every single recruiter asked you, and when it was engineering specific, every single recruiter asked you computer science, computer science, computer science. They were looking head and shoulders above for people who did programming. To me, I have a programming, you know, skill set, but it's not what I want to do. And I just remember going, golly, man, I got the wrong degree. So I have never actually worked as an industrial engineer. My degree is industrial engineering and operations research. They touched on it a little bit in the presentation, where I don't know if Joanne said this joke, but IE is an industrial engineer or an imaginary engineer. And then the joke is like, yeah, but I'm your boss. So for me, what I did is I actually went to work in the oil and gas industry. At the time, I was really close with my grandmother, who since passed away. My grandfather had passed, and there was only my aunt was able to take care of her. She was in Texas. So I took a job opportunity in Louisiana. It excited me. I looked, when I went to the career fair, they had like a great big oil rig, and it was in the middle of the ocean. And it was like, do you want to work in Kuwait or the North Sea and the Gulf of Mexico? And I thought, man, that would be so cool to be a part of those big projects. So I moved from Santa Cruz, actually from the Bay Area. I was living up in Berkeley at the time, and I took this job not knowing anything about it. And they gave me like a $10,000 signing bonus, and I was like, okay, like I'm rich. And I went to work, and I flew out there, and my wife didn't come. She wasn't my wife at the time, but we were, you know, had been together. I'm like, I'm gonna go fill this job out. Like, if I like it in a month, like we'll come down and we'll make it work. So took the job, company truck. They put me through 2 months of training. They had like their own academy, flew me to Houston, developed a skill set there. I had to do a bunch of different training courses to be able to go offshore, wear a respirator if you need to, climb a rope, fitness tests. So it's really different than a lot of way you think about engineers now. We're like in an office in a cubicle with a clipboard. And I really liked that. I met people from all over the world, a lot of females, a lot of males. I mean, people from places where oil is big, the Middle East, Ghana, so it was a really, really cool set of people to work with. And then I ended up working in the Gulf of Mexico on deep water drilling rigs for like 6 or 7 years. And my curiosity, and there was a lot of downtime too. So a part of that job is like, I'm gone for a month at a time and I'm on an oil rig and there's nothing to do except for work and monitor things. So I got curious about something and I actually developed an algorithm that was utilized by my company that really helps for steering wells and determining the wellbore position with a mathematical algorithm, an iterative algorithm. So I published a paper. I presented it to my boss. He was like, okay, let me send this to some people who know more about it. And through that paper, which was through curiosity, just the desire to tinker and think about things, I actually met like the CEO of the, not the CEO, but the president of Drilling Services, a lot of high level key players at that company. And they basically brought me in and said, what do you want to do with your career? You've got so many other options than like sitting in the field. And I was like, well, I really like the field and I have a few other things that I want to do before I move in the field. So I actually became a radiation protection supervisor. So some of the things that they do when they're evaluating a formation they're drilling through is they use sensors. And there's a plethora of sensors. I mean, magnetic resonance imaging that they, use the tipping rate of hydrogen to determine if it's oil or gas or water. And they do resistivity measurements with multiple propagation resistivity and acoustic sampling. They also use radioactive sources and they can bombard the formation with gamma rays and fast neutrons. And based on, mathematical algorithms, how these things are measured and how many different molecules scatter, you can derive a lot about the formation. So it's not like you're just drilling through rock. Like there is in real time a lot of data coming up and you're analyzing that. So I became a radiation protection supervisor and I was in charge of the radioactive sources on location. And like if anything went wrong, like I was regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and it was a big deal. So I did that, and then a position came up in Germany to do research and development on a next generation tool that they use to steer autonomously these directional wells. So I asked my wife, I go, hey, you want to go to Germany? I got a job offer. And she said, yeah. So, I mean, Joanne talks about how this changes your life. I mean, I went from a kid stuck in Boulder Creek to going to Germany, and like, they fly me over, they fly my family over, full health insurance. I had a new car every 3 months, a new rental car. My wife just probably got 5 tickets in France, driving all over. And I learned to speak a little bit of German. They actually offered me a job in Germany, and in some ways I wish I took it, but it was just too gray and I couldn't do it. And the other thing is, like, when you go to Germany or some cultures, it's very different. You'll learn that when you meet other students from areas. Like the Chinese culture is a certain way, the Indian culture is a certain way. In Germany, engineers are 100% happy to just design like a low voltage power supply for 20 years. And I'm not that guy. Like I get bored, I want to work on different things. So actually, at the end of the year, the project was a little bit weird. We were getting purchased by GE at the time, the company I was working with. So there was a lot of push to get the project out the door. It was a big deal for the acquisition. and it became very political. I couldn't say that things weren't working. I'd have to say they were like in test, still in progress. And I'm pretty cut and dry person. If it's not working, I'll just say it's a piece of junk. It's not working. Um, so I actually ended up leaving the project. I told them in Germany, I said, I'm done. I'll go back to the US, but I'm not going to sit here and play politics on something that's not working. At the end of the day, my name is on it, and I'm telling the leadership it's not working. And they go, well, you drilled 3 wells with it. And I go, well, if we go drill a well for BP or Shell or ConocoPhillips, we'll drill the well, but it'll probably be the last well we drill for them for a long time. So that's one of the things that having an engineering degree can do for you. It affords you the right to utilize your own voice and reputation, to say, with certainty, like this is not working, or, this is working. If you do, I would recommend, I didn't do it, Joanne recommended it at the time, to get your IET, your engineering training. Definitely do that, because later in your career to go back in and do the test, the equations, and it's not going to happen. So yeah, I think I covered a little bit of some of the projects I worked on. I drilled
Graham,
the
hang on a second, Graham. So
Yeah.
you guys all talk about the EIT next week when we talk about employment and professionalism.
Yeah. And I'll just add in, like, there is at no point, like Joanne, I don't feel like steered us wrong on anything. Seriously, like she hadn't, like, if I look back to the advice that she gave us, she didn't steer us wrong on anything. So I think your guys' success is greatly tied to her as well. She's a great teacher, a great friend. I mean, the amount of students that just want to come back and say hi to her and speak to her. So engineering has impacted my life. When I came back from Germany, I went back to Louisiana, and it was kind of like an awakening for my wife and I. We're like, you know what? Like, we've been in Louisiana for 7 years. We went to Germany. We didn't quite fit there, and we didn't really fit in Louisiana either. So my wife really wanted to get back to California. So I actually took another position with the same company in California, and I did that for about 8 months, and then I started my own company. So I started a company, and what I do now is I consult to oil and gas companies, specifically one which is here in California, which is California Resources Corporation, and I supervise a drilling rig for them, or multiple drilling rigs. So I don't work on the equipment on the rig. I wear a hard hat. I go outside. I typically live on the rig for 2 weeks at a time. I make reports. If there's problems, I communicate that with the in-house engineers at CRC. I deal with the regulatory aspects. There's a lot of different issues with blowout protection and well control and safety and efficiency. I plan material shipments to and from the rig, and I basically make sure that everything is moving efficiently and safely. And that is what I do now. And it's nice. I don't work for anybody else. I have people who I'm beholden to, but for the most part, it's a pretty relaxed deal. It definitely slowed down a little bit for me after the pandemic. So I think you guys are in a really good situation, because the economy is probably going to reset and rebound and restructure over the next couple of years by the time you're graduating. And this will give you a really good chance to see, like, what is the best field or niche that you want to go into. But don't ever think that you're shoehorned in, like, oh, I'm a chemical engineer, I gotta work at Pepsi and try to find out a new ingredients for the Monster Energy drink. You can do a lot. Like you can, like, Katie had gone and, like, she did ag, and now she works for a small company. And your first jobs, guys, like, you're gonna feel like a small P, maybe, and it depends too what company. If you go to a big company, you're like lost in the mix. If you go to a small company, you're like wearing several hats. You're an engineer, you're a tester, you're a sales guy. So don't feel bogged down. That's the thing that engineering will get you. Like, you can go anywhere and get a job pretty good. you know? So where do you want to live? Where do you want to raise a family? These things are questions that you can afford to ponder, because employment won't be a huge major issue. It might be, I mean, the economy is strange. Everything is always weird. There's always different generational upsets. But with an engineering degree, I think you'll be standing on a pretty firm foundation.
You're awesome, Graham. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah. Any questions for Graham? I have the chat open, so if you want to write him in the chat, you can.
Yeah, no problem.
I like the idea what you said, Graham, is that you got an industrial engineering degree, but it would just show that you're capable of getting a degree and it's a technical degree, and then you were employed in something different, and then you had so many options and you just changed to suit what you wanted and what your family wanted.
Yeah.
It's great. And now you're working for yourself.
Yeah, that's, you know, I mean, you can't blame anybody when anything goes wrong.
Yeah, but you got the experience under your belt, so you're competent, and it's great.
Yeah.
Okay, questions, you guys? And I could always, if you don't think of a question now, but you think of one in the future, I could get in touch with Graham as well. Graham, is that okay?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I'm always there to help out. If you're looking at different schools to go to, or, you know.
Okay. And Graham, where are you located right now? I know in California.
We're actually back in Santa Cruz,
You are.
but we're looking at property. We came back here after the fire because we were hoping to buy some property in Bonnie Doon, but
Yes.
the housing market here has gone just crazy. So we sold 2 houses in Southern California, and we're actually renting now on the west side.
Okay.
And we're maybe going to Sonora, so we don't know.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, Sonora's nice too. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat, so we're just going to say bye, Graham, and then I'll get in touch with you if there are some questions, but thank you so much.
Thank you too. I hope everything's going good. And I got that you were back in New York with your mom.
Yeah, I'm
okay?
visiting my mom.
Okay.
So,
Okay, good.
yeah, everything's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Thank you, Joanne. Good
Okay,
luck,
bye.
guys. Hey, one more thing. You're always going to doubt, like at any given point, there's going to be a class that kicks your ass. Maybe multiple. And you're just going to have to like close, like engineering is hard. That's what, when I met Joanne, she's like, okay, guys, you got to be on and that. And I'm like, whoa, lady. She was like a drill sergeant. Just close your eyes, tell yourself, I got this. And that's all I did the whole time. I just kept telling myself, I'm going to be an engineer. 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 And it's such a big accomplishment. There was a girl who randomly, she was like graduating in front of me. So her family got a picture, you know, they were taking pictures of it, and they got a picture of me when I was graduating. And it's probably like the best picture I've ever seen of myself. It's such a big deal, and it's took me 6 years. Katie said it took her how long did it take, Katie, Joanne?
6 plus 2.5.
I was at Cabrillo for 4 years, but I got everything done. And then when I did apply, they couldn't tell me I didn't have anything. I had everything done, and Joanne made certain of that. So make sure to work with her and do due diligence, and make sure you get all your stuff done, and you can do it. Anybody can.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Graham.
Graham.
Bye.